Hey everybody, welcome back to Whiteboard Finance. My name is Marco and I'm here to help you master your money and build your wealth. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the potential United States Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. Our country has oil reserves, they have food reserves, they have a bunch of different types of reserves, but this is something that's gaining traction. I think it's a huge asymmetric opportunity if it does come to fruition. So we're going to be talking about this from a perspective of a way out of national debt, but we're also going to be talking about what it's going to do to the price of Bitcoin. So what are strategic national reserves to begin with? So they're a stockpile of certain materials that are held back from normal use by governments for a particular strategy or to help deal with unexpected events. So if you take a look at this picture off to the right, you may have to watch this on something bigger than a mobile device, but you have here the year established. So from the 1930s, we had a strategic grain reserve, then a strategic cheese reserve in 1933, U.S. gold reserves in 1934, strategic petroleum reserves in 1974, strategic national stockpile of 1999. This is from the Department of Health and Human Services. And then finally, will we see a strategic Bitcoin reserve? So just to give you some perspective, the Federal Reserve also holds various assets such as gold certificates, foreign currencies, and U.S. Treasury certificates. So this would be something like almost... you'll see here later in the video. It's almost a play of how to reduce national debt, but also how to actually strengthen the dollar and make it more legitimate than it already is. So what is a strategic Bitcoin reserve? So in July 2024, right here is a screenshot from Senator Lummis's proposed bill. That bill is called the Bitcoin Act. Excuse me, Act, not bill yet. So what that stands for is boosting innovation, technology, and competitiveness through optimized investment nationwide. Basically what they're saying is they're going to have a Bitcoin purchase program. We're not going to buy more than 200,000 Bitcoins per year over a 5-year period, but trying to get to a total acquisition of 1 million Bitcoin. So let that sink in. I think right now the United States, just from certain seizures and illegal activity, they have about 200,000 Bitcoin right now currently held. If you look at a country like Germany, for example, they just auctioned off or sold their Bitcoin at market. This may actually be the start of something getting closer to 1 million Bitcoins if this were to go through. So all Bitcoin acquired through this program should be held for a minimum of 20 years, and no Bitcoin may be sold or disposed of for any purpose other than paying off the federal debt. That's kind of what this video is going to be about, and we're getting here in a second. So if we go to her screenshots, this was November 6th. This was after Donald Trump became president-elect. So she's saying that we're going to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The future is bright. This has 6.6 million impressions with 83,000 likes and 18,000 retweets. That's huge for Twitter or for X. So Anthony Scaramucci, this was about a day ago. He said, time to focus on something the market isn't completely understanding. By the middle of next year, if Cynthia Lummis has her way, the U.S. will have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. It will force other central banks to do the same. So what you guys need to understand is game theory, and I'll talk about a couple of my tweets here later in the video, but if you have two countries, which we'll talk about later in the video, I don't want to jump outside of the presentation, but basically say you have two competing countries. Let's say that's United States and Iran, United States and China, United States and Russia, for example. If any of these countries start adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet before the United States does, they're already in at a potentially lower cost basis, and they're already ahead of the game, which is going to force other people to join after the fact, right? It's game theory. So there's a much longer and better explanation of game theory, but just for the sake of this presentation, I want to get to the debt payoff portion of this video. So let's talk about the situation first and foremost. So how would a strategic Bitcoin reserve help the United States? So right now, the U.S. federal debt has surpassed $35 trillion. It's actually just... it's almost at 36 trillion at the time of this recording, and it's increasing at an accelerating pace. Last year alone, the interest expense on federal debt, you can see this right here, this black line, starting with 2020, exceeded $1 trillion, making it the second largest budget item next to Social Security. So what we can't comprehend as humans with our small lizard brains is we can't visualize $1 million, let alone a billion, how much bigger a billion is than a million, let alone a trillion, okay? And there's time analogies that maybe I'll put on the screen to help you understand it better. Trillion is an unbelievably big number, and that's just the interest, okay? That's just the interest, not the principal. So the U.S. government has consistently spent more than it has raised with taxes for over 20 years, a deficit that now stands at $1.6 trillion annually. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that the federal deficit will continue to grow over the coming decades with no end in sight. So if you take a look at the national debt clock, we're almost there. We're almost at 36 trillion. But let's talk about some traditional or non-Bitcoin ways to fix the debt crisis, right? And does it even need to be fixed? If you talk to people that believe in MMT, modern monetary theory, they just say, hey, the government's balance sheet is not like a household balance sheet, right? We don't have income and expenses, even though in a way they do. They have tax receipts, they have government spending, of course. But basically, they don't treat it the same way as you and I treat our household balance sheet, right? Oh, we make $5,000 a month. What can we spend on Disney World, right? That kind of a thing. They believe that you can just keep printing, and raise taxes, and that'll take care of it, right? Well, that leads to inflation, newsflash. So let's talk about the non-Bitcoin ways to fix the debt crisis. You have austerity, which is being austere, lowering expenditures or raising taxes to balance the budget. However, this is unpopular and not something that a politician is typically going to run on. You have mandatory expenses that we can't necessarily decrease. You have Social Security, you have Medicare, you have funding foreign wars, which seems to be the soup du jour over the past 3 years. You have use it or lose it. Budgets start at a high from a previous year. So basically, if anyone here has worked in government, you try and use up your budget as much as possible. That way it actually stays the same, if not increases for the next year. Otherwise, it's going to get cut. It's basically a way of saying, hey, you didn't use up your full budget. Here's 80% of what you had last year. So use it or lose it perpetuates this. And then tax increases, which can reduce economic activity. And then it's obviously not popular. You're never going to see a politician go, hey, you know what? I'm running on increasing your taxes. It's only the opposite that people run on. And then money printing, right? We talked about modern monetary theory and inflation. So basically what they say is, hey, I'm a government. I'm going to rely on the effects of inflation to erode away the value of my national debt, right? So say total inflation over the next 20 years is 1,000%, but the U.S. debt grows by, let's say, 100%. Let's just say it doubles. The real value of the federal debt would be reduced by 80%, right? Inflation is 1,000, you're raising it 100, right? So the absolute size of the government debt decreases. So that's the big thesis behind like MMT and inflating away the debt, right? We've talked a lot about this, especially in WhiteBoard Finance University. And if you haven't joined WhiteBoard Finance University, I highly suggest you do that. So how can Bitcoin actually help solve the U.S. debt crisis, okay? So if you look at this chart provided by River, you can see the yearly average growth rates. M2 money supply since 2014 increased 6.3%. The S&P 500 increased about 10.1%. And then you have Bitcoin increasing at 63.5%, right? So if you invest in assets that appreciate faster than the inflation, that's how you can maybe cut into this debt. Bitcoin is less than 1% the market cap of stocks, bonds, and real estate. And then it's game theory. Again, we talked about this, being one of the early adopters, be in El Salvador, be in Argentina, that kind of a thing. So how Bitcoin can help solve the U.S. debt crisis. So this chart, these numbers are a little bit outdated. I just took this screenshot because it was easier than making one myself. So thank you, River. But basically, 1 million Bitcoin, according to Senator Lummis, would cost about $75 to $76 billion at the time of this recording. It would have to appreciate 467x in order to pay off the debt. But you don't have to necessarily do that. You have a low downside of acquiring Bitcoin. So the acquisition of 1 million Bitcoin for strategic reserve would be a relatively small investment for the United States. Look at how much money we've sent overseas just to fund proxy wars, right? So at today's prices, acquiring 200,000 Bitcoin per year, it would amount to less than 0.2% of the annual federal budget, right? That's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. So also this ensures our world reserve currency status, okay, and it ensures the future of the U.S. dollar. Regardless of your view on the U.S. dollar, it's the best interest that the U.S. government has to ensure the dominance of the dollar as the global reserve currency. We talk about U.S. dollar dominance on this channel all the time, right? Everyone wants and needs dollars until there's something better, right? Say the BRICS come along with a commodity-based currency, and everyone starts going to that, right? And they say, hey, dollar, that's just some made-up funny money. You can't even pay off your tax receipts or your interest on your debt, right? So again, this could just be low downside, also world reserve currency opportunity, and then it's a long-term opportunity, right? Bitcoin is still in its infancy. It's highly likely that after establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve, the U.S. and many other developed countries are going to follow suit, okay? This would put United States in a place of long-term position of strength, and that's why I think it's important. And then also, we need to continue our innovative supremacy, okay? So United States, there's a ton of people that still come here to this day for the opportunity of the low barrier of entrepreneurship, innovation, not so much red tape as you have in like the European Union, for example. So let's continue. So what is this going to do to impact Bitcoin itself? So obviously Bitcoin, there's only 21 million ever, with an estimated 2 to 3 million being lost. So let's just call it, 18, 19 million Bitcoin that's available ever. And then you have a fixed supply with almost infinite demand if this were to happen. You have strategic alignment with regulation, strategic alignment with the government, and then also control. So Bitcoin is highly decentralized. So I'm kind of jumping around here, but these are all positives that would actually make Bitcoin friendly to governments if the United States were to adopt it, as opposed to being this, anarchic, rebel, I'm my own bank kind of money, right? So take a look at this. This is a tweet from British Hodl. People have opinions about him, but this is just a decent tweet in general. Basically, MicroStrategy is going to purchase about $20 million of Bitcoin a day. That has nothing to do with the U.S. government strategic reserve. But if they were to put $200,000 Bitcoin a year buy order in this market, that would result to somewhere around at least a floor of $173,000 Bitcoin. And then after the next halving, you're looking at right around 346. Okay, we have not even begun yet. Okay, so as always, what are my thoughts about all this? If you've been watching this channel, I've been talking about Bitcoin on this channel since December of 2017. It's one of the most divisive topics on my channel because my channel is kind of like, it's a interesting audience. It's car buyers, it's Dave Ramsey, it's a bunch of stuff, right? And then it's people that understand Bitcoin, it's people that don't understand, money, understand stuff like that, people that do understand money. So when I talk about something like Bitcoin, if it goes outside the scope of someone's understanding or kind of like their worldview, they automatically dismiss it. So there's a bunch of resources that I can point you towards if you want to learn more about Bitcoin. But my point is, as an American citizen, I was born and raised in the United States, but I also see perspectives from other parts of the world. The United States is kind of, how do I say it? It's still great from an opportunity standpoint, but when it comes to youth getting ahead, or at least being equivalent to their parents, or at least baby boomers, for example, they feel like they're making a losing bet, right? They feel like, I can't afford a house, I can't afford a girlfriend, I can't afford kids, I can't afford anything. What's the point? Let me go slap on my VR headset and just go play video games all day, right? So if we come up with something that's more of like a strategic reserve, or at least go towards something that's somewhat of a sound money, and if you guys don't understand the properties of money, Bitcoin is the best form of money ever created in human history. It's not debatable. It has all the properties of sound money, significantly better than fiat in my opinion, but you kind of have to understand the fiat game and play it, right? So my point to this whole ramble is that I think that doing something as, I don't want to say drastic, but this is no different than buying a better version of gold, okay? So it's no big deal for central banks all around the world to buy gold. Why wouldn't they buy Bitcoin? It's just a better form of gold. It's gold for 2024 and beyond. Gold, you can't go to Costco and shave off some gold at the register and say, oh, can I buy this milk with my gold dust particles, right? You can do that with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is divisible to 100 million, right? So at the end of the day, I just think Bitcoin is a better form of money. It's a better form of storage of value. If you understand how Bitcoin works, you understand how it's mined, how it comes into existence, how it's hashed, how it's basically created or mined, if you will, brought into existence is what I'm trying to say. And it's just a much better form of someone at the Fed clicking a mouse button and saying, hey, we just expanded the money supply by 80% the last 4 years. Enjoy. Your grandkids are screwed with inflation. So with all this being said, I'm a big proponent of Bitcoin. I've been buying Bitcoin since 2017, but it's only about 17% of my net worth. Why isn't it more? Because it is still relatively young, and there has been a lot of like headwinds. It's always pronounced dead, regulation, this, and this. But with the presidency or the president-elect and also the House and Senate being completely dominated by one party, that's not to say the people inside that party are pro-Bitcoiners, but it is to say that legislation like this, if it were to go through, there is an increase of percentage of chance that this happens, right? Is it going to happen? Who the hell knows? Maybe, maybe not. But if it does, there's no better time from a risk return asymmetric bet standpoint to buy Bitcoin than right now, unless you got in years ago, right? When it was trading in the, double digits, triple digits, quadruple digits, right? So hopefully you got value out of this video. Send this to someone that you're potentially trying to orange pill, because if this Bitcoin strategic reserve happens, other countries are jumping on board, and that's not debatable. It's going to happen, right? The tweet the analogy that I like to use is, if you guys remember that video of the dude at the rave just kind of dancing on the hillside by himself, it took like 30, 40 seconds for someone else to join him. And then when the second guy joined, then everyone at the concert joined. It was interesting. So that country's already been El Salvador. El Salvador was the first to take it seriously and continue to buy and have Bitcoin strategically on their balance sheets. And there have been other countries that have tried it, but not to the extent that El Salvador has tried it. But once that second genuine country joins, that's when everyone else is going to join the party. Thank you so much. Check out WhiteBoard Finance University if you haven't. It's in the link in the description below, and have a prosperous day.